Scions of the Southland, the first Scions of the Southland for 2025. Your weekly dose of Georgia Tech numbers and words is back for a brand new calendar year. My name is Akshay Easwaran, and joining me from a weirdly dreary slash cold, it's just a weird weather day in Atlanta is Jake Grant. How are you doing today, sir?
Well, I'll take that and run with it a little bit. It was for like 2 hours, it was beautiful around here. And then like 5 minutes ago, it was somehow sunny and drizzling at the same time. I love a sun shower. I don't understand them, but thanks for the magical weather, I guess. And now it looks like we're gonna get sleeted on. Well, it's much too hot to sleet, but it's very January, and I see my the podcasting is visual medium. I see my reflection here, and I'm like, oh, I look like I need some sun. So,
Vitamin D is an important part of a balanced diet, I've always heard. I've always heard this. I've never actually, proven it myself.
many are saying.
Many are saying indeed. So before we get into it, how was your new year? What did you do for Eve slash day?
Oh gosh, I mean, if we're getting into that, the New Year, this was a lot of travel between the in-laws and my parents, and seeing folks and things like that. It makes for hectic times, but we talk about in the meta term transplants to Atlanta, and how that affects Georgia Tech, and how it affects me in the post coming to Georgia Tech. It means that I'm often on the road, so it was a lot of travel, but saw some snow. Love that. Had a white Christmas, in fact, so not going to complain about that, and yeah, made it back with few delays. So shout out to on time and smooth travel. That's a blessing. So
Yeah, absolutely. I watched the Peach Bowl in person, which was a fantastic experience to be a neutral in a football stadium
that was
again.
a great game.
It was a very, very
Yeah.
good game. Cam Scadaboo did everything and more that you could ask for in that fourth quarter, and Arizona State still lost. So, um,
You can cut me off if this is still painful, but that's what going to Atlanta United games when they were good with you was like. Just to give you some of the good sports feelings maybe, but or just saying that you make for a good entertainer there. But I mean, shoot, it's entertaining. It was a quality product. It's in a building that's really cool. Shout out Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And to that point, we're talking about New Year. We're talking about new things up and about. I've started to see national championship ads, which, yeah, that's going to be here in like 2 weeks. So, woo, big event for the city. So,
yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. I mean, there'll be a bunch of events on around the city, like the playoff playlist stuff, the
yeah,
concerts, the ostensibly free concerts, or they were the last time stuff was in town. So,
yeah.
that will be it'll be an interesting time. It's going to be and insane. Depending on who makes it, obviously, out of the four teams left. But which, by the way, I'm taking a victory lap on this. The game on paper adjusted EPA model technically
Hmm.
ranked the four playoff semifinalists in its top four for the season. I'm
Hey,
pretty excited about that.
there you
Uh,
go. That's not bad. That is not bad.
it is not
Um,
bad.
I was gonna say, in my head, I thought the next Final Four we were getting was much sooner than it actually is. It's 2031, but championship this year and FIFA next year. That's a pretty good set of,
Oh,
of of big event dates. I have no idea when or if Atlanta gets the Super Bowl
they're on
again,
the
but
docket again, so it's like
28, right? Something like
25. So
that.
they're also getting soccer this spring or this spring and summer with the Club World
Mhm.
Cup. So Club World Cup and then proper World Cup next year, and then I guess there's another and then the national
I
championship
think
this year, obviously, and then there's probably basketball. I mean,
basketball's
another
2031. I just looked it up because I was like, maybe, but I think we get a Sweet
there's
16 Elite Eight this year though,
there are too
at
many events.
State
They're
Farm.
just too many events.
I was
It's
trying to
so
spin
much.
it as a good thing. I think it's pretty neat,
No,
but
it's very
I don't know.
neat. Somehow we've gotten so far afield of the only. This is what we're doing to fill air because there's really not a lot going on during the festive period for Georgia Tech athletics, but there is basketball, and we did end that tangent on talking about basketball. So this is quite an effective segue to talk about the now the what the number 13 women's basketball program in the nation, the
Yeah.
Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, after an 85-68 victory over Syracuse. That was and look, it was a little testy to start the first period there. But Tech ended up pulling away in the second frame and then ended up winning by what is that, 17 points. And really put their mark on this game during that second
Yeah.
quarter. What do you see on this one?
Yeah, I think that just kind of we've talked a lot of like high level metrics on this team. I think in our various wheelings and dealings, maybe not so much when you and I popped in and saw a game in person, but actually, wait, I don't think I've been on since we saw them in
No,
person. So that's maybe we haven't. So this is all great podcasting, but to kind of take a non-analytical approach, it's a team that spreads the ball around, and I think we kind of knew that. That's not really stating anything too crazy, but that 16-16 first quarter, back and forth, really the whole way for the most part. Obviously it ended tied, and I guess Syracuse was up by a decent clip there, but I've simply memory hold that because Georgia Tech did do an effective job. But really, that was the only time they've been threatened in weeks, and it was 6 minutes into a game against a team that they eventually, you know, did a pretty good job of handling. But I mean, in that period, you saw a Syracuse team shoot 46.7% from the field, while Tech shot 26.3, and ended that period tied. I think the underlying like game flow of that, like clearly that Syracuse shooting was unsustainable. And in the same way, I would argue Georgia Tech not shooting that well was also not sustainable. Tech had 7 turnovers in that period as well. I think if that's, I mean, yeah, UNC game kind of tightened up at the end, but that's about as competitive. Maybe competitive is not a nice way to put that, but that's about as competitive as any team has played a first quarter against Tech all year. No?
yeah, and I mean, I think, like you said, Tech just struggled to put points on the board in that first. Like shots just weren't falling in a way that they had fallen for most of the part of the year, and Tech also struggled to deal with size. I think that's been a theme for this team when they do in the periods in which they do struggle, they're just try, it's usually against bigger teams, but then they spread the field and they shoot from the perimeter in such volume and that they're making them at such a decent clip that they're able to make up for those kinds of deficiencies. And so all of those factors combined, I mean, they put up 28 on Syracuse in that second frame at a plus 13
Yeah.
clip versus, and then they use that's basically the difference, right? It's tied in the first frame, plus 13 in the second, plus one in the third, and then plus three in the fourth. So
Yeah,
it just they really put the hammer down in that second
and
period.
and that's it coming back to normal, right? Well, granted, probably shooting 55% is not necessarily normal, but it's not like they were lights out from three during that period. They're 14%, one of seven. But they did do their job at the line too. Arguably, Syracuse didn't even shoot that poorly in the second period or in the second quarter. 6 of 17, 35.3%, 50% from behind the arc. It's not that Georgia Tech played, particularly differently. I just think it was Syracuse came back to earth just a little bit. Things evened out for Tech, and I mean, the rest of the way, I think it was you know, pretty even. The first and second quarter certainly had a lot more variance than the third and fourth. No,
Yeah, just reading some stats off the sheet here. Danny Carnegie leading everyone in this game with 28 points, 27 minutes, 11 of 18 from the field. And then also, most importantly, by the way, 6 of 8 from three, which is frankly astonishing clip to be hitting from three. I think
yeah,
Jack's uh, routine saying on her is that she is a bucket. Her and Chit Chat a little took a step back in this game, obviously, with only 1 for 5 from the field and 2 points overall. But both of those both of those players just they are dangerous. They're what like in soccer we'd call like goal dangerous from anywhere on the court. It's astonishing. And they've been real powerhouses throughout this early part of the season for Tech. A
yeah,
couple other notes from the Bart Torvik page too. One of the places where Tech struggled in this game, and it's their only red box on this game here, is actually the offensive rebounding from Syracuse. Syracuse posted, if I can actually flip over to the team stats, they posted 20 offensive rebounds to Tech 16. So that's something to, I mean, again, it's the size, right? And it's not that large of a margin, to be fair. It's only four going one way or the other. And Tech was able to grab 27 defensive rebounds. So um, it's the one red box in a row of green to neutral, and the game score is still over 97. However, or is still 97. And I will say that there is now one game that is on the record that is sub 90. So that is disappointing. But you know, 15 and 0, 3 and 0 in the ACC. It's not bad. It's not too
yeah.
shabby.
I think if you would have told any of us, Jack included, before the year that they'd be sitting at 15 and 0, 15 games in, I think we'd be like, yeah, that we're good with that. We're good with that.
I
It's
mean, we'd
hard to
ask
complain
you,
about
we'd
any of that. And
probably ask you what you were on, to be fair.
hey, the even on the offensive rebounding piece, Syracuse is a big team. So you find different ways to win. And I mean, this game, yeah, they were down 9-7. Basketball is a game of runs. Syracuse just had the first run, and Georgia Tech took more of them, and they were longer. So it's kind of how I
So,
feel, at least.
so there is updated bracketology. The date on this from Charlie Cream is the 3rd of January at 11 a.m. And I'm looking for Georgia Tech's name live. They will be hosting, if all this holds, obviously, they'll be hosting a regional at McCamish. It'll be Alabama, South Florida Tech, and Florida Gulf Coast. There'll be a 4 seed. Do you want to guess who the 1 seed in this region is?
Well, it's either Texas, South Carolina, UConn, or UCLA. So I'm going to go South Carolina out of
It
proximity. So
is South Carolina because nothing can ever be easy. It's a good Georgia Tech women's basketball team.
but
Nothing can ever be easy.
that's the thing though, man. Like it's the same thing where like and this will get a little meta, so I'll try and keep it within some boxes. Georgia Tech women's basketball right now has exploded into the same place that women's volleyball has sat in, and arguably men's baseball. I'd put baseball in there too. Men's swim and dive, uh, women's tennis for the last couple of years of this team where they're really good and they should win a lot of games, meets, matches, whatever. Most of their games, meets, matches, whatever. But like the top 10 teams, the top eight, the top six, the top four are insanely good. And women's basketball is going to get that test against Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's probably a little bit still to come together to be, South Carolina good, but it's certainly going to be their toughest test. And it's a team that's played what, three ranked teams already, so not necessarily an untested Georgia Tech hoops team. So
Yeah, just to go over the Bartorvik rankings, by the way, North Carolina is actually now top 10 in the Bartorvik rankings. They sit at eighth after playing number five Notre Dame earlier today as we record this.
getting
Tech sits at 12th.
smoked.
Duke is at 11. It's The top of the ACC is pretty ridiculous. NC State is down at 18, Florida State at 19. This is not really going to be helpful if I start reading out a bunch of
Yeah.
these ratings. So I'm just going to continue on and say, looking for the next three games on Tech's slate. That is versus Bart Torvik, number 56, Virginia Tech, number 41, at number 41, Louisville, and then at the aforementioned number 5, Notre Dame. So,
And even then with all that, the top of the conference is great. There are eight SEC teams in the top 18 of the NCAA NET rankings. So yeah, what is that? Our neighborhood's crowded. What not to use a Todd Stansburyism, but it's true, right? There's a lot of great teams right in this ballpark. There's a lot of great teams in this league. Um, shoot, Tech is what 15 and 0. I believe they're guaranteed what 31 games if you include the first one of the conference tournament.
yes.
They guarantee a winning season in the first week of January if they win against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, who since really like 2021 has been in that upper tier of the ACC. They're hovering in the 50s in NET right now in the net rating. But hey, that's not a bad team. It's not a prove it game, but you lock that down and you're going in, to a Louisville Notre Dame slate feeling, I would say, probably pretty decent, right?
Yeah. I will say on VT, no Georgia Amore, no
Yeah,
Elizabeth Kitley. So this team, and I think the
yeah,
coach left for Kentucky, right? Some weirdness. I don't remember where he went, but he left after they made the Final Four. So this is a pretty significantly reconfigured team from
yeah,
what that last era of really competitive VT teams have looked like. Bar
yep,
Torvik has the predicted score at 84-66 Tech. Um, Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and count it as a W. We don't. You and I don't do that. Jack is a little bit more optimistic than both of us, but you and I may not poke that bear with a stick there.
I ain't touching that. No way.
No, I
Not a
think it'll
chance.
be, and I think to Jack's point, right? This is one of those like gotta get this win, and you get it at home, right? This is Thursday,
Yeah,
the 9th. I think, let me see what the tip time for this one is, because it's not coming up on my radar right now. It is a 7 p.m. tip time here on Thursday, and the students will be back. So look for. There was someone in our comments a couple weeks ago that was very concerned about student or like attendance at these games. It is increasing, right? I think Jack said the last home game had one of the biggest crowds that he's seen. And then and that's on a holiday. So once the students come back, you're looking at, and they realize that, hey, we have one of the best women's basketball programs in the country at the halfway mark of the season. I think you'll start seeing a lot better crowds
yeah.
than even
Also,
what they're
it's not
set right
finals
now.
season anymore.
Yeah.
It's conference season. It's not finals season. I see no issue. Yeah, it'll come.
Yeah.
So
The next two fixtures, like you were saying, at Louisville, that's a 4 p.m. tip at next weekend, next Sunday on the 12th. That'll be on ACC Network. That should be a fun one. And then the aforementioned fixture versus Notre Dame is the following week. Mr. Grant, why don't we take a quick break before talking about men's basketball? Back at a tick.
yeah, as always, this podcast is brought to you by Section 103. Section 103 is the best place to find Georgia Tech apparel, and it's bigger, more diverse, more interesting than ever because now they have hats. There are tons of options. Section 103 has several gold, navy, white combinations of those with rope, without rope. However you want a hat, they've probably got it in all of your favorite Georgia Tech related logos, apparels, and colors. That being said, you can find them at section103.com. As always, free shipping on orders over $80 every day. And as always, tell them we sent you 10% off using code FTRS. That helps us, helps you guys, and your business helps a great Georgia Tech guy as well over at Stephen and the gang that they tells them to keep making great stuff, and we are truly appreciative of their contribution to the tech sphere at Section 103 on Twitter as well. You can find them there, and keep an eye out for big ranked wins for men's, women's basketball, et cetera, for maybe some surprise deals there as well. Akshay, back to you.
Let's talk about men's basketball. They dispatched Notre Dame in a 60 or an 86, excuse me, 75 victory earlier this week, and then also posted a victory versus Boston College yesterday. The Notre Dame one, as many of these Notre Dame Georgia Tech men's basketball games go historically, we always like to call these weird. They've never played a normal game before. I think this one was weird in a different way. Tech led by 19 at the half and didn't really let go of this one. Notre Dame has, ooh, this Notre Dame team is stinky.
They might be bad, but it's I don't know. I'm not going to say fully that this is, turning corners, proof of concepts, but Notre Dame, by most metrics, is better than Georgia Tech. So this is, something we can consider punching up just a little bit. I know I've been leaning on the net rankings a little bit. You got Duke and Pitt right at the top 15 teams. Boston College, Virginia Tech, Miami, and Syracuse are all sub 150. But the kind of wide middle of the ACC spans from, top 40-ish type teams, Carolina, SMU, Louisville, but all the way down to Georgia Tech at 138. So it's certainly a conference with, like I said, a wide middle. I'd put Tech up against a Louisville, SMU, Clemson with how they've been playing. Pretty robust offensive performances in the last couple games. We'll get into BC in a sec here as well, but I don't know. There's a glaring issue. I don't know if you want to unbox that one right now, but defense wise, offense wise, an 11-point win against a team that's by the numbers better than you. I mean, it's why you play the games, but this game wasn't super duper back and forth in doubt. Tech led with 11 seconds to play in the first by 19. So it did tighten up there coming down the stretch. Notre Dame did outscore them coming down, but I don't know. Tech was pretty effective from the floor throughout, and if they can limit some of the many turnovers, that's not the glaring one that I had in mind. But I saved that one to you because that's a common Akshay talking point for what you think or for what I know you're thinking about qualifying this team with.
I hope it's the thing that I have written in the notes because I can't stand it when teams can't shoot from the free throw line. And it drives me batty when you post free throw make numbers that are sub like 80% with hilarious consistency. It just
Yeah.
drives me up a wall. And Tech did
Well,
that in both games, by the way, if we want to transition over to talking about BC. 72% made free throws versus Notre Dame. 56% versus Boston College. It
yeah.
up a wall. They're free points. They're free points. Make like I don't understand how you're bad at this. It just this sounds to me like every time we do this bit, it sounds somewhat like the old like streamer tweet from like 3 or 4 years ago. That's like, I don't understand how kickers can just miss field goals, right? How do you just simply miss a kick? I would just not miss a kick. However, I think there is something legitimately reasonable about saying you should be able to make 80% of your free throws at a walk. Come on.
Yeah. I don't disagree. Tech shot 72% from the line in the first game, the Notre Dame game, and 56% against Boston College. Uh, you know, Boston College is probably pretty inarguably the worst team in the ACC. They are, however, not the worst team we played this year. No, Tech is 6-1 against teams rated worse than Boston College on the year. But if you even shoot 80% in because they went 15 for 27. Like that's a pretty large sample. This is probably a 30-point drubbing if Tech can take advantage of all their trips to the line. They went 21 times in the second half alone. But that being said,
Unbelievable.
their shooting for the game was really, really good. They shot better from the field than they did from free throws. They shot 59% from the field. It offensively a very good game, balanced attack in both games. Both saw at least four scores in double figures, and Tech had five in double figures against Notre Dame. That's and again, really great shooting, 56% shooting, or sorry, 57% against the Fighting Irish. That's a team that's been pretty good offensively. A lot of turnovers, or sorry, that points from turnovers is what I was looking at. Never mind. I should not have said that last one because I'm doing this on the fly. Good amount of points from turnovers. Forget what I said about turnovers.
We're
Nine
leaving all
is
of this in,
a
by the
normal
way.
number, and eight is a normal number. It's a long week. It's been a long weekend. It's
Well, let me pick it up for
we
you. I think what to talk about
yeah,
this in like a meta way, as we like to do. It's a decent little run of form, right? You pick up a win
yeah.
versus Alabama A&M, you pick up a win versus Notre Dame, you pick up a win versus Boston College. Obviously, you're talking about a low major versus two high majors, and make what you will of the quality of Notre Dame versus Boston College, but that's three wins on the trot is three wins on the trot, right?
Yeah.
I think someone that I was talking about men's basketball with mentioned, oh, it's like Tech is starting to get into a groove. They're getting healthy. Duncan Powell's
Healthy
been
is
a
probably
really
big.
big contributor. It's like,
Mhm.
is some of this change in form, some of this like this change in fortune too, is that due to the health, due to the reintroduction of Duncan Powell, if you will, because he's getting a lot of that kind of star kind of airtime with ESPN and on the social media and everything. Like, is that true? Is either of those true? Are neither of those true? Like, is there an underlying change here that you think is potentially sustainable?
Well, not to be all, here's when we'll find out, but I think we have a pretty decent shot at finding out on the 11th at SMU. Georgia Tech heads up over, up, some direction,
Is it
over
directly
to
connected on I-20? Well, now I'm curious.
yeah, it is. It's pretty much a straight shot over on I-20. But Tech gets Syracuse midweek up in the Carrier Dome. Syracuse, not very good this year. That needs to be a win if you want to keep forward progress going. But yeah, SMU's last I checked, they were 3-0 in the conference. They're top 50 team in net and in ratings. It's in their building. I think that's one that might tell us a little bit here. Not to say that there's some of these that you might start to want to get back, but early season loss at North Carolina by 3. That's looking tough. We don't need to go into the North Florida thing. That was weird and wild. They considering 198 points were scored, which is kind of insane. But Northwestern, UGA, UNC, maybe you start to squint and say, hey, what does a perfectly healthy Georgia Tech team or a perfectly in-season Tech team look like? But again, this is a song and dance we've done before with this team, right? It feels a lot like how we were feeling last year, but without the buoying of maybe a couple of those early season Duke, Mississippi State type ones where you could squint and see it put together. But I don't know. I don't think there's and I'm sure there's places I should have checked ahead of time to say, hey, there's a possibility that if Tech goes, you know, super duper undefeated, that they're in the mix down the stretch. But I don't know. I don't think that's super realistic or super honest for us to tell our audience. So maybe we instead say something along the lines of, there's a lot of conference play left. They can very well win enough games to get a decent seed in the tournament and maybe make some noise there, maybe NIT type thing. But you know, you gotta you got to win an at Syracuse game where you can get it, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe the at SMU, at Clemson, and at Pitt opportunities that loom large come down the back half of the ACC slate. Maybe that's an opportunity to do something interesting, neat, memorable, something like that.
So the just looking at the schedule and looking at the Bartortic page for the men's team, you're right in that SMU game is pretty pivotal because that is a point 0.6 win above bubble. So pretty
Yep.
sizable difference there. Florida State a couple weeks later is actually a week later, excuse me, is 0.56. Clemson at the beginning of February is 0.68, and Pittsburgh towards the bottom of the end of the season is 0.73. So again, that middle of the conference, like you talked about, there's an opportunity, especially on the road in some of these places, to pick up crucial wins against the bubble and start stacking them as you get towards the ACC tournament. And then once you maybe you win a couple games in the ACC tournament, like you said, and put yourself into the proper tournament picture once again. But it's,
That's a
it's a
lot of
lot of
things got to go right
ifs.
for that.
Yeah, it's a lot of ifs. It's a lot of stuff that doesn't make me feel great, if we're being honest. It's a lot of
Yeah.
leaving a lot up to chance, but I don't know. We'll see, I guess, is
I
my
I,
is
I
all I
want to
got.
toss one more thing that's kind of rolling around the back of my mind on all this is last year, obviously, a lot of non-Damon additions to a team, a lot of late additions to a team. Maybe somebody says, "Hey, they did about the same year over year. Why? What are we looking at now? What's going on this year?" I think one thing I've been trying to keep in the back of my mind is the very highly touted Georgia Tech like recruiting class situation that we keep you know, hearing more and more about. Not for any small significance, but that's a lot of future that the cavalry is coming, right? That's kind of the same thing we've been saying with I think softball the last couple
Oh
times
yeah.
we've mentioned them, but like not that the rest of the year is a wash by any means, but it's a confidence builder, it's a system builder. It is get by healthy and functioning and able to, mentor the next men up kind of thing. And I think, I mean, having Lance Terry's back's been good for imparting that on some of the younger guys, but you know, the highly touted pipeline of prospects and talent, I think that's kind of a next year type of situation. So
Yeah. I mean, he'll be around next year. It's just
yeah.
they gotta stack some of these wins here to keep build, like you said, keep building the confidence in the program. Next couple fixtures, like we discussed, at Syracuse. That's a 7 p.m. tip on the 7th. That's on ACC Network. And then at SMU, that's a 4 p.m. tip on the 11th. That'll be either on ESPN2 or ESPNU. Personally, I think they should be swapping these TV slots with the women, but that is an aside that we can discuss to death at another time. Jake, any other fixtures coming up for Georgia Tech athletics?
Yeah, we got a couple in the mix. Swimming and diving hosts Auburn, or Tri-Meet versus Auburn and Carson Newman coming up on Tuesday. Don't quote me on the versus piece of that. It might be at Auburn. I imagine it's here, but I realize I wrote versus, but I'm not fully confident in that. So go figure. Track is at Clemson on the 11th. They spend a lot of their indoor season making the trip up and down I-85, so nothing out of the ordinary there. And then weird at least for my brain, men's tennis and women's tennis kick off the year with match play. Women's tennis versus Georgia State and Mercer doubleheader on Saturday. Men's tennis versus UNC Charlotte on the 12th at noon on sorry, the 12th is Sunday for additional context. But yeah, it feels like we usually see a tournament or two to start the year for particularly the women. So a little bit odd. I'm not complaining. Bring it on. I think both teams should be pretty solid this year. So yeah, let's circle that because that'll give us a little bit more to chat through coming up. So
Absolutely. Also, just to circle back to the Auburn Carson Newman tri-meet, excuse me. That is at home. That is a noon start on Tuesday if you are so interested. I think that about wraps it up for us this week. As Zoom warns me that we have 3 minutes left in our free recording, of course. Um, it's a light week. We had to do some padding at the start. We spent a lot of time talking about women's basketball though, which was always a good time.
No complaints there. No
No complaints
complaints
at
at
all.
all.
It's always
Yeah.
fun to talk about an undefeated team with a chance to go with a chance to continue being undefeated. And the men are undefeated to start 2025, technically. That's pretty neat. There's
Hey, we take
positives.
it. We take
There's
it.
po
I'm perceiving them now, you know?
Absolutely. Where can the people find us online, Mr. Grant?
Yeah, people can find From the Rumble Seat at fromtherumbleseat.com. You can find us via email from the rumble seat at gmail.com. I'm mostly moved up to Blue Sky, but FTRS you can find on Twitter still at FTRS blog. I believe we're on both. Jack is at Jack Nicholas on Twitter. Section 103 at Section 103 on Twitter, section103.com as well. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search From the Rumble Seat. You can find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are sold. As always, tell your friends. We appreciate it. In the meantime, good night, good luck, and go Jackets.